So, how have you been all this month with this COVID? What have you been doing? Tell us.
Um, well, I was in quarantine for a little bit, like everybody else.
Of course.
Uh, and then the Black Lives Matter movement happened here in Philadelphia. And I felt it was my responsibility to document it.
Of course. And what about? Can you tell me a little bit where you came from?
I grew up in the U.S.-Mexican border on the Mexican side of Ciudad Juarez. I was born in El Paso, Texas, but moved as a baby to Juarez. And then as an adult, I moved to the U.S.
And what brought you to Philly?
Love.
That's a good reason to come here.
Yeah, the father of my daughters was going to the restaurant school here in Philadelphia. So we moved. He left when we got divorced. He left back to Texas, but I fell in love with Philadelphia, and I stayed ever since.
Oh, well, we're glad you're here with us.
It's been almost 20 years.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, you're local.
Yeah.
And then, where did you study photography?
Well, I studied art, and I started marketing. Art, I studied in Milan, and marketing, I studied at Drexel University. And then I took continuing ed classes at Fleisher and at UArts. And from there, I learned with continuing ed education for photography that my background was in painting.
Right, and I have seen some of your paintings, but it seems like you're mainly focusing on photography for now, right?
I left painting. I felt so in love with photography that I completely left painting. My painting is still part of my composition.
Okay, so you look at your photograph like a painting almost. Is that how you see it?
When I'm doing a composition, I always have that reference of a painting. It would work as a painting. But I'm more interested in documentary photography because you're doing a moment in history, and also because you're telling the truth. With painting, you can romanticize it.
Oh, that's true. Yes,
But with photography, it is what it is.
you're right. And usually you work in series, is that correct? Or am I? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
All right.
correct.
Okay, and so the last one you worked with was the Black Lives Matter, right? That's the last thing you.
That's the last one. And the
Okay.
one before that was La Caravana del Diablo,
Okay.
which was the last migrant caravan that came from Honduras, that left Honduras on their quest to the United States. This happened in January 2020.
Why, and where was that? Where did you photograph?
I traveled to San Pedro Sula, Honduras.
Okay.
And then from there, I traveled with them until Mexico, where they got deported and tear gassed.
Wow.
They weren't allowed to continue their journey like the caravan of 2018 did, to the journey to the border. In this case, Trump said to the Mexican government that they were going to increase the tariffs of Mexican goods coming into the United States if they allowed the caravan to continue. So they got La Guardia Nacional, which is composed of the military and the army, to stop the refugees from entering Mexico. When they did enter Mexico, we crossed via the Suchate River. But soon after the entrance, they were put into buses and tear gas and deported back to Honduras.
Wow. Well, so you document, but you also are part of the group, right? At the same time.
That's important for my practice. I sleep with them, I eat with them, I travel with them. I don't travel in a car separately. I do the journey with them. I feel that I can get better pictures. I feel I get a better experience because I get to know the people. I get to really have conversations with them. long talks, because as you're walking a caravan and you're walking for miles, you just develop like very profound conversations that are very enriching, and you learn a lot.
And then you sort of bring them with you with your photograph, you know, like you
Exactly. And they become part of the captions for the work.
Wow.
To also show here in America the injustice of what's going on in the immigration system.
And I do, well, you know what? Before I can ask you 5 million questions, but before we start doing that, why don't you give us the tour of your studio? That way and then we'll have questions.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with this picture here. Let me turn the lights off so there's no glare. And perhaps you'll see it better. Otherwise, you'll see it in the slideshow. And there is a little bit of, this one here, I don't know if you can see it, is a group of migrants crossing the Suchate River. And this happened at 5 in the morning on January 23rd of this year. And there's basically two ways of crossing from Guatemala to Mexico. The bridge, which has like the regular immigration process. And then there is the river, which the immigrants tried to cross 2 days before and they were tear gassed. But at this occasion, we crossed and we managed to get up to Ciudad Hidalgo. And then I have here this other picture.
About how many people were there, you think?
For this caravan, it started as a very big caravan of 8,000 people. However, it started getting divided into groups, and the caravan separated in San Pedro Sula. A group left on the 14th, January 14th, and another group left on the 15th.
Wow.
And then a part of the caravan also got tear gassed in Guatemala and were not able to continue the journey.
Wow.
So it started getting smaller and smaller. But here in the Suchate River, approximately 800 people.
Oh, wow. That's quite a bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then here I have Laura and her daughter. And this picture is in the permanent collection of the Philadelphia Art Museum. It's from the migrant caravan of 2018, which I followed from Tapachula all the way to Tijuana. So basically traversing Mexico with them. And this young woman was threatened by Barrio 18, which is a gang, a very notorious gang. And she had to give them an impuesto de guerra, which is like a war tax to the gangs. So sometimes she had nothing to eat, and she had to feed her daughter sugar water to calm her belly, the hunger. So that's why she decided to migrate. And then I have here one of my favorite pieces, also from 2018, La Princesa. And this is in Tijuana, in the Benito Juarez shelter. And it gives me it gives you hope. It shows you that not everything is sad. This girl got the dress as a donation from the donation box that the Red Cross was giving, and she grabbed it. She was like, no, it's mine, because all the other little girls wanted it. But that day, it was her turn. And when I took this picture, she was the one that called me, because I was so depressed seeing the conditions in which the migrants were being treated in Mexico. They had over 5,000 migrants, only 7 porta potties. They were giving them very, very little food, very little medicine. Yet this, and I had like my hair, my like face like to the ground. And this girl calls me and says, "You're not gonna take my picture? I'm the princess." So I took her picture, and it just it centered me into focusing of what's important.
Wow.
And then I have here Mar from the LGBTQ community. In the Northern Triangle, which consists of Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, gay marriage is illegal. So, but in Mexico it's not. In Mexico it's legal in Tijuana. So this was the first gay marriage of the Caribbean. And Mar got the flowers. And I don't know if it's the same tradition in the United States or not, but in Mexico and Latin America, the person that gets the flowers is the next one to be married.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So she was quite happy. Then here I have reinforcing the wall in Tijuana, which basically when the refugees arrived, this is what they saw. It wasn't like the image they were expecting. It was a lot of police, a lot of border patrol agents protecting the border. Here, this is migrants aboard a bus, and it's about in the narco states of Sonora and Sinaloa. The Mexican government provided buses for them to be transported. So that way there wouldn't be any danger, because in the state of Puebla, unfortunately, over 100 members of the migrant caravan were kidnapped, including children, and they were never found. So after that happened, the Mexican government provided buses in the narco states. And I got into one of the buses, and this is the picture.
Where were they heading to?
Tijuana.
Tijuana, okay.
And it was all strategic because the closest border from Tapachula, which is the border with Guatemala, the Mexican border with Guatemala, the closest border would have been Texas. But they are not a sanctuary state. And the judges are not so lenient for asylum seekers. So in Mexico City, it was strategized that the best decision would be that the caravan tried to go in through Tijuana, because it's a sanctuary state, San Diego, and the judges are more lenient towards immigration issues. And this is Maria and her son. This is in Tapachula. And if you see closely, the little son, he's 12. The gangs start recruiting children at the age of 10 in Honduras.
Wow.
So she left because they wanted to recruit her son. That's also one of the reasons why you see the phenomena of unaccompanied minors from Central America coming to the United States. Because many families make the decision that it's better for the children to leave and travel to the US where they could have a future than to have them die in the hands of a gang. Even if they became gang members, their life expectancy is up to 25. And then I have this picture also in Tijuana. And this is Concepcion, who, I don't know if you can see well, lost a leg in the train La Bestia, which I've documented as well. That's the train that moves migrants throughout Mexico to the border towns. And he was trying to get asylum. He was a member of a caravan.
Wow.
And then, let me see. And then I can show you, we can start the slideshow and I can show you the rest of the work. And
we'll get it started now then. Here we go.
okay, here, this is the second leg of the Suchate River that borders between Guatemala and Mexico. 2 days prior, the caravan had been tear gassed. Members of the caravan had been tear gassed trying to cross into Mexico. But this time we crossed at 4 in the morning. And I have the picture of the big part of the Suchate River as well here in the slideshow, which you'll see later on. But this is the second leg. And as you see here, like there's like a little baby here, a lot of families, a lot of children. And it was quite sad. But the determination of the people to have a better future and to leave the horrors of the gangs in Honduras, which, by the way, were initiated by Ronald Reagan's policies. But we'll get further into that. Go ahead.
So can I say that one of your recurrent maybe themes is survival, right? Like
it's survival is human justice, human rights. Yeah. Here is the marina, part of the Guardia Nacional, that was stopping the migrants from getting in further into Mexico. So here we had a glimpse of just how many there were, and just that they were prepared.
And since you've seen it firsthand, I mean, what happens when someone tries to cross? They just basically push them? Is that what happens?
They got ¿cómo se dicen? Ay. The shields. They got the shields and pushed them into the buses. And they also tear gassed them into the buses.
Wow.
So they physically forced them into the buses they were going to use to deport them.
Wow.
Violently doing that. And it was quite sad because, as I told you, I sleep with them, I walk with them, I eat with them. They become my friends.
Of course.
So they see me and I have 2 cameras and they think I'm press. So they're not stopping me. But I'm seeing all my friends being stopped and being corralled and shoved into buses, little children tear gassed. It was really sad.
Wow. All right, should we go to the next one?
Yeah, go ahead. And this is an example of just the military taking the kids and the people into buses. And this had happened after they were tear gassed. As you see, they had their eyes closed. Many received burns. So yeah. Then go ahead to the next one. And this just gives you a magnitude of how many military the Mexican government had to put the migrants in the buses. As if you see the bus in the background, and then they're holding their hands, and as they were holding their hands up, they were saying, "Queremos paz, queremos paz. We want peace, we want peace." You also see the LGBTQ plus flag, very present. And unfortunately, in the Northern Triangle, the lives of LGBTQ
communities are extremely at risk, and their murder rates are very, very high. Honduras and El Salvador have up to the highest murder rates of LGBTQ communities in the world, right? So these should be people that should be getting asylum, because under the 1951 Refugee Act, if credible fear of persecution, and they're not following the Refugee Act anymore, all because of the tariffs and the policies that Trump is now forcing into Mexico. This is the other part. I followed the caravan, and I followed the two groups. I did first the group that left on the 15. That's the group I originally followed, which is this group. And they ended up in the border of Tabasco, which is Tabasco and Guatemala. So this is mostly by the jungle. This group was allowed into Mexico in groups of 10 by the Mexican official in charge of foreign affairs. And he said that they were gonna give them asylum. That was all a lie. They allowed them in, they tricked them basically. And once they were in, they put them in buses, they sent them to detention centers, and from those detention centers, they were all deported. So it was just a trick. After that, I went to Tucunuman, the other border where the other group was, and that's where we crossed the Suchate River. Go ahead. This is in Honduras, and it's just as people are leaving, many sometimes get rides, and they try to feed as many people as possible in the trucks. But this can be also very dangerous because there has been people that have fallen and died. Next one. This is also in Honduras, and this is the departure. We left at 5 in the morning from San Pedro Sula. And I chose this picture because it gave you like a different feel of what a caravan looks like. Like here, this guy is holding his guitar, you know, the other one smiling, like they have hope of a better future.
Yeah, and I also, when I look at this, also like you grab your most precious item, you know, in his case, the guitar was that item, you know.
Yeah. This is Eva and her son. I traveled with Eva until she got admitted into Mexico. She was later deported. And she was traveling because she was in search of her other son, who the father had kidnapped. So she wanted to go to the United States and recover her 9-year-old son. And was who the father had taken when she was 7 months pregnant. So as soon as she could, she was able to try to go and find her other son. But that argument didn't lead her anywhere because she was deported. This is Joel, and this is in the Suchate River. And when we crossed the river, the person that helped me, because my bag was very heavy, I basically told this guy, can you help me? Can you hold me so I don't fall? And he was holding some crutches, but I didn't know who the crutches were for. And then as we were on the end of the river, he gave the crutches to Joel, his friend, who only had one leg. So imagine making the journey all the way from Honduras to Mexico, crossing basically two countries, Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, with one leg, to be deported.
Wow.
And this is here when we're crossing at 4 o'clock in the morning. And you see numerous people just desperate to cross. But the water for like a normal person is like mid-waist. But for somebody like me, I'm 5'1", it was a little bit higher. So that was a little bit complicated, because I also wanted to take pictures of the river and what was going on. Well, we didn't know if we were gonna get tear gas. There had been tear gas 2 days prior, but this time we managed to cross. And this piece here is probably one of the most important pieces, because it shows that the hope is still there. The problem of immigration is not going to be solved anytime soon, especially by decreasing foreign aid to Central American countries, or by the Remain in Mexico policy. Though that's not going to change. People are still going to try to immigrate until we have something more solid in the table for human rights in the Central American countries.
So this is the American flag, right?
This is the American flag. So basically he's leaving his flag, which is Honduran, and they made these flags. They made them with like lona. I don't know how you say lona in English. But just they make it with materials and with paint, and they try to, they're basically pleading to be accepted, to be left in. This is the peaceful protest of saying, please let us in, we're begging you.
Do you think he wrote his name in the flag? Is that what that is, or?
Yes.
Yes, okay. That's a very powerful one.
Thank you. This is on the way to the Suchate River in Guatemala.
Wow.
And then you have the next one. And this is when we're waking up, getting ready to cross the border between Guatemala and Mexico. This is Jose, 7 years old. And it's just, he was ready. He was ready to embark the journey. This is the shelter, if you can call it that. Not even a shelter. It was basically a dirt piece of land with dirt, and we slept there.
I would like to, I don't know, this is just me, but I'm observing this, and the composition, it almost looks like a flag.
Yes, it does. It does.
And I love that.
Mm-hmm. It does. And that was also one of the reasons why I took several pictures of him. But in the process of selecting, it was like, what do I want to say and how do I want to say it? And it was going back to what I told you about referencing a painting as much as I can with photography and real life.
Wow.
This is David. Him and I became friends, and he was so kind that he let me sleep in his tent in the shelter. Well, not in the shelter, basically in the terrain, on the floor. The bed. He made a sort of tent, made man tent, and he allowed me to sleep there with his friends. He was also deported back to Honduras, 18 years old, but in horrible economic conditions. And he's hoping to be able to go to the United States and work. And this is the main thing. Like, these folks don't want to come and and cause violence, or like what Trump says. These folks want to come and work, and they're great in agriculture. They're great in other crafts that that we need here in the United States. El señor Padilla, again, an agriculturist. He also had experience in construction, but because of his age, he couldn't find a job in Honduras. And he had a 15-year-old and a 16-year-old kids. So he wanted them to have a better future, and that's why he decided to try to immigrate to the United States. And when I asked them, one of the questions that I asked is, do you want to go to the United States or do you want to go to Mexico? But unfortunately, a lot of migrants have been kidnapped and tortured, killed in Mexico. So they're scared that of staying there and trying to work in Mexico, because it is dangerous for migrants. It's dangerous for everybody, but mostly for migrants because they're very vulnerable. And this is an unaccompanied minor trying to cross the border of Tabasco by El Ceibo, so between Guatemala and Mexico. He didn't believe that they were gonna allow them in. And I was sitting there and he just crossed. He just crossed, 12 years old, completely alone. And as I said, many families send their children alone because they're scared. They have been recruited by the gangs, and they're scared that will be their lives.
And they know how to get by. I mean, survive, basically, right? Like they'll cross by themselves, and then they're on their own, basically.
Yes, I actually became friends with a young little boy, Luis, 14, and he's now in Mexico in a detention center with waiting his process. He can either be deported to Honduras, which would be horrible for him, or he would stay in the detention center in Mexico until he turns 18. But they're not giving them school.
Oh wow. Okay.
So they're just in the detention center, but they don't provide them school, at least to the migrant children.
Wow.
And then next one. This is in El Ceibo, in Guatemala, and they're pleading authorities to let them go by and let them in. And of course they did, but they tricked them in this border. There were 2 borders in this caravan. Unlike the first one that I documented in 2018, where they all stick together and they went through one border. This one, they separated into the 2 borders of Guatemala and Mexico, Tabasco and Tapachula. And this is in the Tabasco border. And one amazing thing about this work is that you see faith. I've lost faith. I'm an atheist, and I'm very lucky, and I've have a lot, and I'm healthy. I'm still working, but I've lost faith. However, I see migrants that have lost absolutely everything, family members, children, but they still have this enormous faith in God. And they have they pray for God to change Donald Trump's heart and to allow them in. And that is really one of their prayers, which I find absolutely amazing. So this is a picture of them praying in the morning before they start their day. This is in the migrant shelter in El Ceibo, the border with Tabasco. And they're waiting to be fed, but they're desperate because they haven't eaten in 2 days. So finally, after traveling and walking for so long, we arrived to the migrant shelter in El Ceibo. And they separate women and trans and children into one section, and then the men into another section. And here they're waiting for us to finish eating so that they can have their turn and eat. But if we finish all their food, then they have nothing to eat because there's limited resources of food. And the food consists of coffee, beans, and white piece of bread. This is my friend Ashley, trans woman from Honduras. She left because she suffered many threats to her life, and she's scared. So she wants to go to America and work. But unfortunately, not only was she deported, but before that, she was put in a detention center with the males instead of being put with the females, which I find horrible.
I think that's the last one, Ada.
Okay,
in this
great.
series. Yeah.
How are we doing with time? So I know how to speed on it on the next
We have about 20 minutes.
We have 20 minutes. Okay. So here, this picture, I took it. First of all, I think what I want to say about the series I did on the Black Lives Matter is that for me it's extremely important to bring unity between not only whites and blacks, but also other minorities as well as Latinos. I feel that thanks to the African American movements, now as a woman of color, indigenous woman of color, I can now enjoy many benefits in the United States that people before me couldn't. It's thanks to those fights of the African American communities. So I feel it's my responsibility to be part of this movement and to document what's going on, and just to show a message also of love. So this one is I did something bad. I stayed after curfew. And I took this picture, and something really interesting happened the day I stayed after curfew. The cops came over, and I thought, okay, great, we're gonna get tear gas, something bad's gonna happen. But there was a talk between one of the protesters and a cop, and basically it was a long talk, but basically the cops just turned around and left. I feel like they felt like they did something wrong already. Just let these people be, and they left. They didn't bother the protesters at all, even though it had been after curfew. Next one. And this one, I took it in one of the protests. We headed to Temple University. And I love it because I love the sign. I liked her. I like talking to her. And where do I go from cute to dangerous? It's like, enough is enough. How much are you gonna exploit us? How much are you gonna abuse us? It's time to stand up. And I think that this is very powerful. The cops were right behind the truck. I wish I had a mouse to show you, but the cops were, yeah, right behind there. They were in bicycles. So it was a very interesting moment. This one here, I really like it because it's, first of all, the love statue, right? And then it has the George Floyd picture on top of it. But it also has this very young woman that says, I will march until the day I feel safe enough to have a son. And I was talking to my friend Morgan, who is here.
Hello.
And she's African American, and she said, I feel this way.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan. Just to tie in both this piece and the piece prior, when do I go from cute to dangerous, and I will march until I feel safe enough to have a son. On the Black side of, let's say, your social media, these are a couple phrases that are repeating within the community, because going from cute to dangerous, or whether or not we are safe enough to have a son, there's a lot to think about as a minority in America. Just as any other person who desires to be a parent, you desperately want to protect your child. But with some of the systems that are being protested in Black Lives Matter, there's some things it's really hard to protect your child from. And it's not even a differentiation of age. Even though we're speaking on Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, all the adults going through this, there are several children who have also received similar treatments. So there is an underlying fear, and that's what they're speaking on.
And I'm so glad that we had that conversation, because having friends like Morgan has really helped me understand the cause more than just like being an outsider, just taking pictures. And that's also why she's helped me a lot with captioning the work, and she's featured in my website under the Black Lives Matter movement. Okay, next. And then I took this piece here, and I think there's a
Differentiation?
Yeah, there's like, you see the homeless African American men in the back sleeping, and then you see the doctors or the nurses, like, racism kills, defund the police, Black matters. And I'm just thinking, oh, give them a blanket, do something. Like, if you really mean it, do something. But that's just how I felt. My daughter told me, yeah, but in order to do that, they would have to do it to everybody. And it's like, well, where's the level of commitment? So I don't know, this is a piece that really makes me think. This is with the National Guard in City Hall. And it's basically people just putting the Black Lives Matter into the police and into the National Guard and saying, hello, like, what are you doing? Same here. I can't breathe. Enough is enough. This was one of the protests. And one of the things that I really liked in Philadelphia about the protest were that the unification of folks from different backgrounds, of different ethnic backgrounds. And one thing that I really like about this piece is the helicopter on the top. I don't know why, it's just everything together. I liked it. This was one of the protests that happened in the Philadelphia Art Museum, where folks are saying, don't shoot, hands up. And I blurred, as you see, some of the faces. For my work, it's been very important in the selection process to keep the identities protected of the protesters, especially under the circumstances that we face right now with racism in this country. I really hope that one day my grandkids will be able to see like the whole picture without the blur, because we don't have that hate anymore. Today's efforts makes tomorrow's change, and that is so true. And I really like it standing next to the American flag, because this is the land of opportunity. This is considered one of the best nations in the world. However, we're seeing these horrible atrocities to the African American community, to the Latino community, and this is not representative of the greatest nation in the world. Something needs to change, and I think that this movement is really heading into the right positive direction of change. And this is also in the art museum, the protest, where people lay down for several minutes in respect, in honor to George Floyd's death. But I feel that this has to stop. This hate has to stop. I don't know what we can do as communities to come together. I don't know what is necessary for these injustices to stop. We see not too long ago in Philadelphia, 1983, where the Move compound was bombed. They had killed 11 people here in Philly, 5 children. Nothing happened to the people that did that. And then we fast forwarded 2020, and we still see deaths by the cops. When is it gonna stop? This is my favorite piece. Do better. I was walking next to this woman, and I saw her, and I had to take her picture. And she saw me because I took several, and we exchanged numbers, and I gave her a print of this picture, and I also sent it to her. She liked this as well, and it was very special for me that she liked what I took, especially because it's not traditional. It's not your color picture. It's now black and white. But I think it says so much. And by the way, this sign was made by her son that she's carrying. She didn't make the sign. The little boy made the sign. This is the other son of this woman, and he also made this sign. It is horrific for me to say that a boy will make a sign that looks like that in 2020. 2020, that a boy will make a sign like this. This is a clear indication that it needs to change. The children are our future, and they can't be believing that.
And the background too. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the statue there. I mean, yeah, very powerful.
And when people ask me, aren't you scared of coronavirus documenting this? My response was this one. Racism is the real pandemic. I've suffered it deeply. And my fellow Black African-American community is suffering it, and we have to unite to stop it.
Beyond that, there's the Asian community too.
The Asian community too.
Yeah. With this pandemic as well, though the focus here is Black Lives Matter, all minority groups have experienced some kind of racism in a way that's a little bit more forward than before. Like for the Asian American community, they have received an extreme amount of violence against them because of some of the rhetoric that our president is saying about the coronavirus, calling it in reference the Kung Flu virus, excuse me. So a lot of them have seen a lot of pain and suffering and some even physical abuse. And though everyone is fearful of the pandemic, I think they're using that fear and turning it onto some of the minority communities that right now are really just trying to advocate for our unity.
Mm-hmm. I like this one. I like this one. Big is too kind of a word. I think also the cops need to be sentenced very, very harshly. The punishments that we're having are not good enough. And until they start getting a lesson, and a very strong one, things are not going to change. So big is too kind of a word. He's absolutely right. Nobody should be able to do what those cops did. No one.
You know, when I looked at this, and English being also my second language, I took big more as a politician than, like I didn't make the association right away to cop, but I thought politicians, I go, yeah, of course.
Okay, yeah. It goes together. This one is a much better picture without the block in his eyes. But since the face mask was not completely covering him, I felt that his identity might have been a little bit at risk. Mm-hmm. So I made the decision to block it, but it is right outside of City Hall. And it was in one of the protests, and it was just this strength to what the speakers were saying, the reforms they're advocating for here in Philadelphia, which one of them is to have thorough background checks, to go and investigate their social media accounts. And I think that those are, just to name a few, because there's a whole list of demands. But I think that is necessary to see if the cops are racist or not, because if if we have racist cops, we don't want them. Like they shouldn't be, that shouldn't be their job. So he was standing up, giving the fist up with the speakers, what the speakers were saying.
And Ada, we only have a few minutes left, and I'm just wondering maybe we should open this to maybe people have questions for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, before we have to say goodbye.
Okay, no problem. Sorry it took me so long.
No, please, we love seeing your pictures.
Sorry.
I know you had so much more to show too. I mean, we could be here 5 hours.
Oops. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, so please, anyone, if anyone has any question before we go, please, this is the time to do it. And I do thank you. It's been fantastic. I mean, yeah, your work is really powerful, and it leaves you thinking. You need to think about what you see. That's a good thing. We should all think. Hi.
Also, hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan.
You as well. Anyway, anyone, any questions? Well, one question. I mean, it's not really a question. When I was looking at all your photographs, and I'm thinking, there's a word or a phrase that they use in English that is people on the fringe. I think that's how they say it. And I don't know if that has a bad or a good connotation. I mean, I myself being queer, I am on the fringe, I guess. And I guess it's a good thing, I'm gonna say. But but then I started thinking about that word, what fringe means, and fringe is something loose kind of thing. So I don't know. I was thinking about that, but I love it that you're doing people on the fringe, because we are all on the fringe. That's how I feel. Somehow we're all, it's all our heads. Anyway, what do you have to say about that? Go ahead.
Well, I want something that makes you think.
Mm-hmm.
When I make a composition, it's important for me to have you think. To not just, if you just look at the picture and go on and not stop for a minute to really see something ain't right, something is there, then you're not thinking. Then it passes by. And I want to give you a message. I want you to think. I want to challenge you. So I guess that's why.
And one of the questions that kind of relates to what you're saying right now, do you see any formal qualities of the image in the moment you take the photo? Or is it more intuitive? Like, does it come just to you? Like, I'm going to take this picture right now. Is the moment? Or are you really studying the composition?
When I'm taking pictures, I'm like a hawk. I'm looking for that special moment that makes me feel something. If I don't feel something, I don't take it. I did several protests, many. I didn't take pictures in all of them. But I always take my camera. It's that moment that makes me tick is what I look for. Because if it makes me tick, then it might make somebody else tick. And then we can have a conversation, and then there's something.
What about another question about the emotional toll on you? Like, traveling with these people in the caravan and, bringing, this is all very emotional. I mean, me looking at it, I got emotional. Imagine you being with them. So how do you deal with that?
I have a therapist. I mean, it's true, because it's so much emotion. As I told you, they become your family. Like, hey, you can stay in my tent. Oh, guess what? Okay, so let's eat tortillas and beans, and let's see how many people are there. Let's separate. Walking for so long, they really become your friends. They become your family. They're like making sure that you're safe, that you're safe with your equipment, and then to see them be deported that way, exploited that way, tear gas, and you can't do anything. How can I fight with all those government official police, with the military? Like, there's absolutely nothing I can do except for what I'm doing now with the pictures and trying to bring awareness, because this is an election year, and the more people that are aware of what's going on and the policies that we now have, the better people can vote.
So taking pictures for you is giving power to the people.
It's my protest. It's a way. This is my peaceful protest.
That's, we'll leave it at that. That's it. And I just want to really thank you. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
And, I want to also give a big shout out to Leeway Foundation for making this happen. Really, without them, this was a really amazing year. And even though all this stuff happened, just to have you here documenting everything, really been wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so thank you, everyone. And please come back.
Thank you.
Ada's not going anywhere. She'll be around. Ada, where can they see your work? Also, your work.
On my website, which is my name, adatrillo.com, ADATRILLO.com. And I'm having a show at Agora Gallery in Chelsea, New York. That's going to be on the opening night on the 30th of July. You can also see it in Instagram. I don't like Facebook that much, so I don't post that much on Facebook. But Instagram is a good one.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Ada. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.